Hello, and welcome to Weird Around Illinois. If you've been listening to our podcast over the last month or so, you've probably heard a particular place come up time and time again. That place is Busse Woods. Enough stuff has happened there now that we have to ask the question about yet another place. What the heck is going on in Busse Woods? Let's get weird. First, let's start with telling you where Busse Woods is. It's basically between Schaumburg and Elk Grove Village and Arlington Heights. It's right at the center of that triangle of those three areas. It is a very popular forest preserve area. A lot of people go there to fish in Busse Lake. A lot of people go there to hike. It draws people from nearby attractions like Woodfield Mall. You've got O'Hare Airport just to the east of it, so a lot of people who are flying in and visiting, just looking for a place to walk through nature in between business meetings or something, they find themselves in Busse Woods. Honestly, I'd have to say it's probably one of the more popular forest preserves in Cook County, maybe in all of Illinois. Certainly every time we've been there, it's been pretty busy.
Yeah.
There have been a number of things that have happened in and around Busse Woods, and some of them have been fairly recent. So we thought we'd take a closer look at some of these things. The main thing that I often think of when I think of Busse Woods and that whole Elk Grove, O'Hare area is UFO sightings. There have been a lot of them. I mean, it all kind of started with that huge UFO that was spotted over O'Hare Airport in 2006. And I know we've talked about that one on separate podcasts. That one to me is still the one that is undeniable, and I don't understand how everyone just kind of shrugged their shoulders and said, well, those 2,000 people must have been seeing things.
It's not quite something you could just walk away from.
Yeah.
Yet they did.
They did, and I guess that shows the way UFO encounters went for many years before the government started to, actually accept the possibility of UFOs as they have recently. But there were about 30 more UFO sightings in the O'Hare area over the last 10 years. Some credible, some not so credible. But if we were to break it down even further, about a dozen of those UFO sightings were in the immediate area of Busse Woods. On the one hand, you might find yourself saying, okay, well, you're close to an airport. There's a lot of things flying over. Maybe people are mistaking airplanes for UFOs. But if you dig deeper into some of these sightings, it's actual airport personnel seeing a lot of them. And they know what an airplane looks like. They see them every day.
Yeah, and they'd have ways of figuring out if that's really a plane. They'd have technology available at least.
Yeah, I mean, when we saw our UFO on the 4th of July, first thing we did was look at our phones and look at the flight patterns and everything to see what was in the area. And we knew right away that wasn't anything on the flight path. If we could do that on our phones in our own backyard, imagine what they can do at the airport.
Yeah, you can scan it, even if it is a real plane.
Yeah. Let's just keep that UFO idea in the back of our mind as we talk about some of the other things that have been spotted around there. Now, this one is a little bit thinner, but dogman sightings in the area. I know we've talked about dogman sightings at Salt Creek. We've investigated those. Some have been as thin as just a howl. Some people claim to have seen something in their neighborhood near Salt Creek. The thing that really struck me was one of our listener comments when they actually dared us to go fishing in Busse Woods at night because of it was in response to one of our dogman investigations. I presume they were talking about dogman.
Yeah, that gave us the idea to go there in the first place. I mean, I think before that comment, we weren't even thinking about going.
Right.
Just another forest preserve.
Yeah, and then we conducted our investigation out there and had, there was one or two odd things, but nothing too serious. But then at the end of it was that police comment. I was talking to that police friend of mine who works in the area, and he was saying, when I was, kind of jokingly talking about us, maybe seeing or maybe hearing dogman in the woods, he very seriously said, I don't know, could have been. There's some strange stuff in Busse Woods. And he never elaborated. I asked him to give a little more information, and he would not. So
that's so odd. You'd think they would at least say something about it.
yeah, it was. I think he realized he said more than he probably should have, and didn't want to go any further. And then, there's the other Dogman account from Scary Stories NYC.
Yeah, it was a like Dogman with wings, I believe. It was in Elk Grove Cemetery.
And Elk Grove Cemetery, as we've noticed with how much time we've spent in Elk Grove recently, is really, really close to Busse Woods. It's like a 1 minute drive away.
I remember we could literally see it from the cemetery.
Yeah, that's true.
That one, somehow the Dogman with wings was like in the trees. I don't know how, but
yeah, that was a creepy one. And there's a couple of creepy ones on Scary Stories NYC. For being NYC, he seems to have a lot of good Illinois stories in there. He must have a lot of friends in Illinois.
Yeah, or at least a few.
Yeah. But it's interesting. That was like a half Dogman, half Mothman kind of sighting. And that leads into the Mothman sightings.
There were a lot like around the O'Hare and Schaumburg area, right?
Yeah, and the ones closer to O'Hare, it seemed like there were a few of those kind of combined Mothman alien sightings, or Mothman under a UFO, or Mothman with a gray alien, or something like that. But then as you get out toward Busse Woods, they're just the more traditional Mothman sightings. The huge winged creature, or as I was telling you earlier, like a winged gargoyle. I think 2 of the 3 sightings in the Busse Woods area actually used the word gargoyle, which I found interesting, because that's not a word that gets used very often. And for 2 different people to use that word to describe this thing, it's clear in my mind they were seeing the same thing. Then we get to some of the less paranormal but equally weird things that have happened over the last a couple in very recent history. The one that kind of encouraged us to make this podcast, about, was it 1 day or 2 days after we were last in Busse Woods that the plane crashed there?
Just 1 day.
Yeah, just 1 day. And it was almost the exact spot where we were standing in Busse Woods.
Yeah, it was that exact end, the south end.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
So there was a plane flying from Iowa to O'Hare, and the plane crashed in Busse Woods, the south area where we were and where a lot of people were looking for the Bigfoot for the radio contest.
Yeah, and so far we've barely gotten any information on it. I mean, the pilot is kind of confused about what really happened. There have been articles saying that he wasn't, or he was injured. But let's assume that he was injured, because I mean, it's a crash.
Yeah. I gotta believe he was at least rattled. I don't know. I read some accounts where they said he walked away with no injuries. I read some that said people found him with, blood dripping from his head and confused about where he was.
No information on what really happened or what the main cause was.
Yeah, the FAA and the National Transportation Safety Board are both investigating the crash. Now, I don't know how long an investigation takes from those institutions, and I don't know if they're ever going to share those results publicly. I don't know if we're ever going to know what happened with that crash. But it certainly struck close to home for us, just because we were 24 hours away from being an eyewitness. I'm going to skip to another thing that happened just a little bit before that, and this happened literally days before our first fishing expedition out there. Someone found a deceased victim on the path at Busse Woods, and the way it was described is they found an unresponsive man covered in blood, and the police later declared he was deceased. Now, my first thought when I heard that is, oh my gosh, there is a dogman out there. It tore somebody up on the path. Now, I read a little further about that. There was another report that came out a few days later that said that it was actually a suicide. The man had shot himself in the head. Now, again, I'm going to ask you to just put a pin in that with the rest of these phenomenon we've been talking about, because I think there's a way to draw a line through all of them. But let's finish discussing what else has happened out there. A little bit older history. There was a 1989 Tribune article that warned of increasing satanic worship taking place in forest preserves, like satanic cults. There was an interview with a police lieutenant or police captain in that, I believe.
Yeah, I mean, the police officer supposedly made the statement that if you went into the woods by yourself, or even as a group, it doesn't matter, you would not have time to pull out a gun or defend yourself in any way, because of cults in there would just attack you in some way. Apparently, they're very violent. I wouldn't say that those are exactly common in forest preserves, but there have been many cases of that, obviously, and it's kind of unfortunate how that is how they're always hostile, I guess. Not always, but...
Now, you see, that was around the time that I was a teenager or a young adult, and that was around the time I was starting my paranormal investigating, so I was going to cemeteries and stuff as well, and it did seem like there was a lot more satanic activity back then. I mean, it seemed like everywhere I went, there were like animal mutilations and upside down crosses and symbols carved into trees. It was spooky,
and we managed to avoid a lot of that, I think, because we don't go that deep into forests and stuff. If we were to go really deep in there, I'm sure we would find some satanic circle and a bunch of dead animals around it. I've never understood why they chose forest preserves anyway. Why couldn't they just rent out an area in some building?
Well, I guess it's cheaper. I don't know. Maybe there was something about the connection to nature. Or maybe there is something drawing all of these activities to forest preserves in general, and this forest preserve in particular. That's the central question that I think all of this stuff raises. I mean, we look at these things and they're supposedly not related. You could very easily say this is coincidence. If you take any stretch of 2 or 3 miles anywhere in the United States, you might find a couple of these things happening there. But plane crash. What could cause a plane crash? Maybe an electromagnetic pulse of some sort that knocks out the instruments? Electromagnetic pulses or changes in the electromagnetic field can also affect the brain. Cause somebody to do something odd, like shoot themselves. If you go another route, if there is an energy about this place, maybe it's the sort of energy that would attract someone who wants to perform a satanic ritual. Maybe it would also attract someone who is feeling frustrated and depressed and near the end of his life and wants to connect with something else on some deeper level as he passes and gives up his life and moves on to the next one.
Maybe that suicide was for a reason, for some personal reason, I'm not sure, but maybe it was on the satanic level. It was somewhere involved in that.
Maybe. And the dogman sightings, could those cryptids be drawn to whatever energy is in this place the same way that a plane could be drawn to it, or a depressed person could be drawn to it, or Satan worshippers could be drawn to it? Is it possible that UFOs are drawn to it? Is it possible that UFOs are creating whatever energy field is there? There are just so many questions that this raises when you get all this activity in one area. Do you think a portal is more likely, or do you think an electromagnetic field, or do you think it's coincidence?
Cryptids probably try to like protect these things, like you guys mentioned, like the worshipping and whatnot. But there's also the Indian burial grounds.
That's a great point as well.
There's a lot that these like cryptids and aliens could protect, really.
If someone were doing a satanic ritual and they were doing their homework, they would look for a place of power, a place like a Native American burial ground or a Native American altar. So maybe they're not just randomly picking a forest preserve. Maybe they're going out to a specific site where there are powerful, ancient Native American medicine men buried there. Something in that realm. And maybe because of these rituals or because of these things buried out there, you've got cryptids protecting it, as you said,
Yeah.
or Mothman protecting it,
or dogman. I keep making this point every podcast.
Mm-hmm.
Dogman is similar to a hellhound.
Yeah.
And hellhounds are known for protecting cemeteries or burial grounds.
Yep.
And with Mothman and UFOs, they have a great, like bird's eye view of that kind of stuff. So it makes sense.
So you've got protection high and low.
They've got a whole security team of cryptids.
Or are the UFOs trying to extract that energy or that power from those areas, and Dogman and the other cryptids are protecting it? It poses so many weird, interesting questions, and it all kind of depends on what you believe. I mean, if you don't believe in cryptids, if you don't believe in UFOs, if you don't believe in ghosts or Native American spiritualism or any of that, then it's a really simple answer. It's a forest preserve. A lot of people go to the forest preserve, weird things are bound to happen. If you do believe in any or all of these other things, then it's so easy to draw a line through all of them. It's so easy to connect them and just say, okay, well, this is a place of power. This is like a mini Bermuda Triangle or something, where weird things in this part of Illinois are just drawn to this particular location. And we keep seeing that over and over, whether it's Bray Road in Wisconsin, or we talked about Cuba Road in Barrington. We talked about Elk Grove Village, but maybe it's more specific than Elk Grove. Maybe it's the Busse Woods area. And of course, further south, you've got the Cahokia Mounds and Little Egypt in southern Illinois. The same sites keep coming up over and over and over again.
Yeah, and the further we look into these places, the more we're going to be able to make a concluding idea of why these things are coming up and why there are so many reports of so many varieties of different things.
Those are our thoughts. If you have any thoughts to share, then we'd love to hear them. By all means, please leave a comment in our comments section. If you've seen something in Busse Woods or elsewhere and don't want to attach your name to it, just fill out our anonymous contact form. Please remember to subscribe to our newsletter and to like our podcast, tell your friends, subscribe if you haven't done so already. And as always, thank you for listening.